So Buddhism, why don't we just call it saddha, which is a Pali word? Why don't we just call it faith? Faith in Buddhism means something, or the confidence is something what you truly see it for yourself. It's not just something you have faith into. When in Buddhism, when we talk about the saddha, the confidence, it really is that something you've seen it for yourself. There's an interesting sutta where one of the disciples of the Buddha, he goes and meets these other people from the other sects, so to speak, from other religious groups, so to speak. And they start questioning him, or the leader starts questioning him. He said, do you think that, what the Buddha is teaching is true? And he says, no, I don't think so. And he said, oh, see, true. Even he doesn't think so. And do you think what the Buddha did, that you can stop your thinking? And he said, no, I don't think so. And do you think that what the Buddha is teaching, these going into the deepest stages of meditation, what we call jhanas, do you think that's true? And he said, I don't think so. And he's like, oh, see, even the main disciple of the Buddha, he's been following the Buddha for a long time. Even he doesn't think so. And he said, well, I don't think so, because I know it's true. Knowing and believing is two different things. So Buddhism, the faith really leans very heavily into this aspect, this notion of knowing. So for you to see something, to experience something, then the faith grows from that. So what brings the faith? Why do you have faith in Buddhism? What the Buddha was really teaching is that when you hear the Dhamma, the Buddha's teachings, when you hear it from a teacher which you can trust, where you can who can explain things well, clearly, you hear the Buddha's teaching. From there, you get your faith, and from the faith, what do you get? You get this introspective attitude. You will start asking questions. You will look really deep into the Buddhist, more into the ideas, like, what does this mean? The teacher was telling me this, now I have faith, and what does these things mean in Buddhism? Buddhism, the key thing is really to start asking questions. Why? Why is this so? Why sometimes when your meditation, for example, works well, it's good to ask, why? Why did it happen? Why this time was different? The same with pretty much every time you meditate, you should be asking, what's different? What has happened? If you just meditate and you simply just get out of your seat and you just go on, you're missing a really key aspect of what you can actually how do you deepen your practice? You need to always keep investigating. And Buddhism, really the key thing is to investigate. Go to the root. And going into the root, going into the deeper and deeper, really means questioning. And from there, you get back into the faith. You really start seeing that if something works or it doesn't work. It's like in English we say, proof is in the pudding. If something works, your faith grows from that. I can see it works for me. I can see this, whether it's deep meditations, whether you get to the jhanas or not, but even those things like meditation works because it reduces my anxiety. I have my stress levels go down, whatever it is. But at least you see it for yourself. So Buddhism, the faith is not like a blind faith. The Buddha called to have a faith is really, it's something to come and investigate, come and see for yourself. And the opposite of faith is obviously, is not unfaith, but is doubt. What does it mean to have doubt? Doubt, the Buddha describes, is something like thicket of views. In Buddhism, view is, we teach, the Eightfold Path. And everything starts from the right view. And the doubt is the opposite of that. It's one of the hindrances, what the Buddha was calling the hindrances, which clouds your mind and you really don't know what you're doing. So to have this kind of hindrance of doubt is almost like almost like a thicket of views, or that's what the Buddha called them, thicket of views. And what it really is the views. You have all these conflicting ideas, so to speak, and you don't really know which one is right. Should I be following that? Maybe I should be practicing this way. Maybe the Buddha was right. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe there was a Buddha. Maybe there isn't a Buddha. All of those things, it's a really big hindrance in the practice. And why it's called thicket of views is that it's like a simile. Like if you go to in Finland and Poland we don't have a lot of bamboo forest, but it's like a clump of, like a really thick forest, where you really don't know, you cannot see, you cannot find your way out of that. Everything starts looking the same. You start walking one direction, you're just walking in circles. In that sense, it's a thicket of views. You don't know from left to right. You don't know which way is the way. But once you start getting these, when you start listening, a teacher which you can trust, which goes in when you're listening, then you start investigating. Then from that investigation, it goes back into that thing where you start getting the faith grows again, and you keep listening more and more, and your wisdom grows. And from there, you start straightening your view. At least you have a certain kind of enough wisdom that you have this kind of like a golden thread. You have a certain kind of like, I know, like, okay, I don't need to believe in everything what it says in the scriptures or what the monks and nuns are teaching, but at least I know for myself that this sounds right. These are the parameters. What was the Buddha teaching? Buddha was teaching suffering. I don't really see that. Okay, that's a key principle of Buddhism, but I don't really see it yet in my life. It doesn't matter. Keep questioning it. Leave it aside. The Buddha was teaching about rebirth. Another thing, key principle, key aspect of Buddhism, rebirth. Rebirth is suffering, and they both go to hand in hand, but I'm not really yet sure I can take this idea of rebirth. It doesn't really speak to me, so to speak. I don't have enough faith. I don't have enough confidence into that. That doesn't sound right. I don't see a rebirth in day-to-day life. You haven't yet investigated enough of how the rebirth process works. You don't have enough wisdom yet. You haven't studied enough, so to speak, maybe. You haven't seen it, how it in your deep meditation, how things could disappear. When the Buddha was always teaching causes and conditions. When you put, or causes and results, let's put it that way. When you put certain things, certain causes in place, results come from there. But once you start seeing that everything is causes and results, everything what happens before, from there something follows. And then you start, when you investigate the Buddha's teaching, and you see it's like, oh yeah, I could see that the rebirth process could work. And then there's a glimmer of faith into that, confidence. But truly, it comes into that when you go into the deeper meditation, like the jhanas. But the hindrance of the doubt is really difficult. And that's why really is difficult in the Buddhist, even in the Buddhists, when you start getting into Buddhism, because how do you know somebody's right? How do you really know even if I'm teaching is true? And then somebody else could be teaching something else. We have different traditions in Buddhism. We have Theravada Buddhism, we have Mahayana Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism. We have however you want to label them. In many different traditions, we have many teachers. And the one teacher says something, and somebody else, some other teacher tells something else. And somebody else says that, like, you don't even have to have any of these Buddhist teachings. We can just have just meditation. Why would I ever even go into this? I don't want to have a religion. I just abandon one religion and then I don't want to pick up another one. The really key principle, what the Buddha was saying, that what's the proof is you start seeing that your mind starts getting calmer. You have less of attachment to the world. A bit difficult to see that sometimes. But the things, when you start seeing those things, is when something traumatic happens, for example. If you have somebody leaves you, your relationships ends. Somebody dies. You see how the news affect your mind. Whatever it is, there's all kind of things which tend to affect our mind. And when you start seeing that it doesn't affect you so much anymore, then you start noticing that what is the reason for this? And that is the reason why you should be practicing now, because those things will affect your mind. Sooner or later, somebody will leave from your life, whether it's breaking up the relationship or somebody dies. Sooner or later, you will get sick. We've all been sick many times. We will get sick again many times. Sooner or later, you will die. Somebody else will die. Sooner or later, you will get old. If you're not old yet, you will get there. These are the things which are ahead of us. So it gives us a bit of a good teacher should remind you of those things, like, practice now because those things are ahead of you. But to see who would be a good teacher, who to follow is, again, you feel like you want to listen to them. They give you confidence, faith. It's difficult to know, really, truly know if a teacher is worthy of listening or following. But the proof in the teacher's method, if there is you could say a method, is really if it leads in the calmness of the mind. That is the only way you can know for yourself. You have to know it for yourself. It's not just like, Buddhism is not just ideas and concepts. It has to be something which works for you. If it works, then the attachments to the world lessen. What are you leaving behind? What is this attachment? You're leaving behind suffering, really. So, if the suffering, what you have, whether it's mental suffering, physical suffering, there's not much we can do about it. The mental suffering, if you start listening it in some way, then you know it's working. How does it manifest? The suffering is lessening. What's the opposite of suffering? It's happiness. If you are somehow calmer, happier person. In Buddhism, we have many synonyms for happiness. For example, one of my favorite words is contentment. Contentment is one of the higher happinesses in what we teach in Buddhism. Happiness, if you just say happy, what does it mean? Does it mean happy? I'm like, when you go to a nightclub. Is happiness when you're going for a walk, seeing a beautiful sunrise? There's different kind of happinesses what we can experience. But the deeper kinds of happinesses are really like contentment. Sometimes we call equanimity, but that is a really deep happiness, but it's hard to really understand what it means. Contentment is easy to see. That's a nice happiness to have. And then when you have more content mind, and the contentment level rises and it's more stable, well then again, what I'm doing is right. What the teacher is telling me is right. So you have confidence towards this practice. Well, what does it even the contentment mean? Well, I've stolen this simile from my teacher Ajahn Brahm, but what I've noticed that this works really well. So the happiness of contentment feels like this. Remember when you were a lot smaller? You were maybe 7 or 8. And you were leaving from the school when the school year was ending. The school year was behind. You know, tomorrow is going to be a time off. You're going to have a long break. All the homework is done. Summer feels like a long summer ahead of you when you're young. And you're walking away from the school, and all the stuff you have left behind is no more there. You're just happily walking towards home from school. Remember that feeling? Nothing to do. I have this long holiday ahead of me. That contentment which comes from that as a little kid. That is those are the things we should be cultivating as Buddhists. Those are the things we should be trying to find in our practice as a Buddhist practitioner. Sure, it's ups and downs, there's all kinds of things. Sometimes it's all over the place. We don't even know what we're doing. But try to recognize those things. Try to find a teacher which teaches you, which leads you into that direction. If that is what the teacher is teaching you, you know you're on the path. You know that this is what I should be following. That should give you confidence. And again, confidence doesn't mean that it's like, oh, it's just a believing. Confidence should come from your own practice. The Buddha said you should make an island of yourself. It doesn't mean you are going to be independent from the world. It just means you yourself know what to do. We are all co-dependent of each other in the world. As a Sangha, I'm dependent of you. I have a team of people who drives me to the airport, who feed us, they give us the dana, who's recording this thing. And you are beneficiary of that. And the Sangha, the monks and nuns, we act like the glue of all these groups. The groups come together, and the teachers and the Sangha, we keep these groups together. So it's good to have confidence that the Sangha is there to keep these things going. And it's been going for a long, long time. So you have confidence to the Sangha. You have confidence to the teachings. That what the Buddha was teaching is, I can have faith that some of this is working. Again, it doesn't have to be blind faith, and actually shouldn't be blind faith. It should be a faith which arises from questioning why. Why is a really key thing in Buddhism. Always ask questions. And then, again, from that, then you will start having more confidence or faith towards the Buddha. There was a teacher like that in the beginning. He set the ball rolling, or the wheel. He set the wheel rolling, and the wheel is still rolling after 2,600 years. It's still rolling, and I'm benefiting from this. What else could there be in these teachings? So these are really, it's a bit of a short talk maybe about confidence or faith. But just have the key understanding of this really is that in Buddhism, saddha, the faith or the confidence, it is seeing for yourself. It's experiencing. Buddhism is it's not faith that it just feels, faith in the sense that it's like what we teach in other religions, but it is a confidence which feels something. I can feel this feels right. If it's just the intellectual pursuit, it's a little bit like, what could be a good simile? If it's just an intellectual pursuit, let's put it this way. There's a lot of Buddhist scriptures which were handed down generation to generations in Sanskrit and in Pali, Chinese, different languages. And I know there's a lot of teachers, a lot of translators who really just translate the text, but they're not even Buddhist. There's been a lot of amazing translators from England, for example, who got a lot of our texts from the Pali into English, but they weren't even considering themselves as a Buddhist. And it doesn't mean I need to say that somebody has to be Buddhist. That's just a label of like anything. Whether I call myself Buddhist, yeah, I could probably, but again, it's like a label. But these are the scholars which just study the thing, and they see they're interested in the grammar perhaps, and they're interested in the syntax of how the language works, whatever, but they don't see what's behind the language. It's like again, Ajahn Brahm simile, is like a professor goes to a nice restaurant and they take the menu, they look at the menu like, oh, this looks delicious. And then what they do, they eat the menu. Don't just eat the menu. You have to actually read the text and then order the food and eat the foods. There's a interesting, quite a nice simile actually in a Dhammapada where it said that the ladle, the spoon doesn't know the flavor of the soup. If you put a spoon in the soup, the spoon doesn't know whether it's nice, savory, beautiful soup. Somebody has to eat the soup. And that points into that idea that you need to eat the Dhamma. You need to drink it. Some places actually been described as drinking the Dhamma. The same word is actually, the piti is the same word. It's like you get the rapture, you get the happiness. So you should be eating it and savoring for yourself. And then you experience it for yourself. The experience here is the key thing. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So experience it for yourself. Keep meditating. Keep investigating. Keep asking questions. And reject things which you don't like. Who cares? Do you need to call yourself a Buddhist? We don't care. I don't mind whether you call yourself a Buddhist. It's just a label like anything. But don't just reject something because you think you know. Don't trust your own thinking mind too much either. Don't become a critical person who's just criticizing everything because we've been taught in the universities that we should be critical. Have a little bit of sweetness. That's one thing I really enjoy living in Australia, because we have a lot of Asians here. For example, a lot of Thais in our communities, a lot of Thais or Indonesians and Sri Lankans. They have a lot of faith. Now I'm talking about faith in, it's more like a religious sense. What does faith give you, that kind of faith, what these Asian people have? They were brought up Buddhist. It doesn't mean they always know it, like exactly what the Buddha was teaching. But what does that faith give you? It gives you sweetness. These people don't just always pick things and pick them apart. If you tell somebody, a Thai person, that this is what the Buddha was teaching, they take it, they go slightly too far. They take it too uncritically, but they take it with sweetness. It's a lot nice to be around people who have a lot of sweetness in their heart, and that's the faith which a lot of our Westerners we're missing. And I must admit, even for myself, that's something I've learned from the Asian people, is the sweetness. So don't be afraid of that either. Have that kind of inquisitive mind, but with kindness. That's the thing what we should have also, what we should cultivate. Have critical mind with kindness. Don't just think that I know better because I've been trained in university. Question your own mind also. So I think that's enough for this topic.